Well, they always say in Renegade how the jig is up. In this case, the gig is up for Mike Tomlin. After 19 years in charge of the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's decided to let the team know that he no longer wants to be their coach. Such monumental news dropping us from the Tuesday evening Irish time. We decided to do an instant reaction podcast. I was sitting here in Dublin under the shadows of Croke Park. Amazing how Mike Tomlin seems so connected with the team that was 3-1 and seemed to be going so well or so early to the season. By the end, for the third year in a row, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 10-7 and have been dumped out of the wildcard round. Interestingly, last night against the Houston Texans in a game where, despite the fact that their defense got 4 turnovers off CJ Stroud in the first half, the offense couldn't get it done, and it seems like the Steelers team was stuck in football purgatory, and change is now coming. Brian O'Leary joins myself, Shane Brennan, to talk about this. Brian, your instant reaction to this news, because I think after the result last night when the Steelers put up basically no offense and looked very, very slow and sluggish in the way that they have been a lot over the last couple of years, people were questioning as to whether the Steelers might be the ones to pull the trigger here. But judging by the report, and I think the report has come from Adam Schefter, from others as well, is that Tomlin himself has decided that he needs to take a step back.
First reaction, Shane, was did he get out ahead of the curve in terms of what he knew the inevitable news was coming his way that the Steelers were going to fire him potentially? Like we spent a week with John Harbaugh being essentially the leading candidate for coaching in this league, and everyone kind of slightly surprised by how quickly the Ravens reacted to that Sunday night loss against the Steelers, in which they allowed John Harbaugh to move off as the head coach of the Ravens. And just over the course of the last 3 games, as the wildcard games are evolving, we got to Monday Night Football, and all of a sudden the conversation, a lot of the outlets, was, what happens tonight if the Steelers lose? That will be year after year, consecutive seasons of making the playoffs. He's never had a losing record, but yeah, it's been quite some time since they've gone deep into the postseason. And that conversation was, what happens if they lose? But the manner in which they lost last night, the score itself probably didn't do the game justice, because even late in the third quarter, the Steelers were in the game, and obviously teams went away from them. Two defensive touchdowns for the Texans. But I guess where we are now with this team, it probably does need a fresh change. And as Mike Thomas seems like the kind of guy that wants to hold all the aces, and he wanted to go out as opposed to being shown the door. Interesting, said he's going to take a break from football. Or sorry, that's what's been suggested and reported by the NFL Network crew. But again, is that the case? Because what happens if we've been here before, and where certain head coaches have said, "Oh, we're going to take a break," and all of a sudden, the opportunity to go and coach somewhere else was too big an opportunity for them to turn down. But it certainly maybe slightly changed the landscape of coaching RSL, which is out there right now, a lot of positions free. For the Steelers, in a weird way, you kind of say sometimes you better be careful what you wish for, because as much as they wanted him gone, if we get to a stage next season where the Steelers are having another difficult season, the pressure on whoever comes in there, the enormity whoever takes over from him is going to be huge. Whether the Steelers have gone beyond the wildcard game or not, the fact is they're replacing a legend. And he's a legend across the league. As you touched on there, Crow Park press conference, you're kind of in awe of the manner of how he presents himself in the press conference. It's a shame for all the fans that he's not going to be on the sideline anymore. Maybe Steelers fans will probably see it very differently. But me, Tim's with a bit of sadness, because 18 years watching NFL at my age, and Mike Tomlin's always been around. I even remember Bill Cowher, and I'm moving back there. So to see him not on the sideline next season, it's going to be a bit unusual.
Unusual for the Steelers to be dealing with a change of head coach. They've only had 3 different head coaches since the early 1960s. So this is the nature of how they do things there. And I think it's interesting you say that the suggestion is that he's obviously said himself that he's going as opposed to being fired. The fact that the decision has been made sort of hours after the result, of course, it's still very much early afternoon on the East Coast by the time the decision was made. But B, the sense that he is going to take a year out, and that honestly would not surprise me. I mean, 19 years in the same building, maybe just needs time to refresh. I wonder whether he feels that the game has kind of gotten away from him a little bit, especially when we talk so much about how offensive coaches are now taking over the league, and that's definitely the hot sort of in-trend thing to do. But look, I mean, the conversation is still going to go. We could be sitting here tomorrow as well. He's a potential Giants candidate. People always talk about the close connection between the Rooney family and the Mara family. Of course, there's a marriage in there. Maybe there's, there might be a bit of talk, or whether that's the latter move he makes. But I think for Tomlin, it wouldn't surprise if he just wants a bit of a rest, because, I mean, to what extent does consistently delivering winning seasons, you're getting booed by your own fans, just tire a man out? I can really understand his idea is to sit back and say, I just need a little bit of a break from this so I can reset and go fresh into something for the 2027 season. That wouldn't strike me as weird at all. What I need to trying to now plan out for the future though is where do the Steelers go from here? Because I was writing about it over the weekend how the Steelers have kind of been caught in football purgatory. They brought in Aaron Rodgers to break that. As in, they're never good enough to win a Super Bowl. We've never spoken about them since the late 2010, since the late 2000s anyway, as being a team who are in the Super Bowl conversation, the way we talk about the Chiefs or the Bills or the Lions or the Eagles. But they've never been bad enough to warrant a rebuild like what's currently happening in New England. Like, is that, like, do Steelers fans now need to brace themselves to tear everything down? Because when I watched the game last night, my initial reaction was, do you know what? Tear everything apart. They need to spend a year or two, even if they're on big losing seasons, to rebuild and try push for something, because they need to break out of this cycle of staying at 10-7. But then the more I think about it, the more I'm like, oh, you really want to be careful what you wish for, because winning culture is difficult to buy in the National Football League.
You could argue now this becomes the most difficult job in the game of the NFL in terms of who comes in there. One, they're going to come into an environment, as you said, that have literally spent years and years of a controlled world where they essentially knew who their head coach was. They don't live in the world that we've experienced, or I'm experiencing right now, and have done, and you have obviously of more late with Bill Belichick walking away from the Patriots. Then you also have to, and then sometimes you bring in a head coach, and I suppose the security blanket is they have a quarterback. Jim Harbaugh goes into LA. They've got Herbert. It looks, again, by all the coverage and the content and what you've seen over the course of the last 24 hours, Aaron Rodgers looks like, sounds like he might have played his last game in the NFL. Who's going to quarterback them next year? Like, that's the immediate question for the GM and the head coach. The GM is going to actually have to find a head coach that is in lockstep in terms of what his plan is for 2026, where to go for the quarterback. The draft is an unusual piece every year because, like, you take a step back to the draft now, you look at Jackson Dart versus Cam Moore, one went 1, the other went 25, I believe, and you wonder which one is in the better environment now, which one has a better situation to go and flourish next season. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a top 10 pick. Steelers are never up there picking. The last time I can recall them even picking that high up was actually the Ben Roethlisberger draft, and they had to, and that was a kind of a fell into their lap scenario. So a bit of a trade as well. So did they be aggressive and try to move up? I think they've got 11 picks in the draft. It's actually, I think they're third or fourth in terms of the most picks selections available for a team this coming April. It's in Pittsburgh. Again, the enormity of that occasion. That's going to be the first, like, it's the first draft. It's the first year without Mike Tomlin. The beauty of the NFL, it always gives you these stories at this time of year, even whilst the wild card and divisional rounds are ahead of us. But it's going to be an interesting week, and hopefully we can grab an opportunity to get to see this beat right around this week and really kind of get into delve into it. But changes the landscape of all these other head coaches as well, Shane, that are thinking about the Giants, the Titans, the Browns. Who wants now to be the Steelers the head coach? Like, throw out a few names. Kubiak has been touted. You know, is there an X factor there where John Harbaugh potentially goes to Steelers and stays within the division? Probably unlikely, but still, like, many a storyline. And look, it's huge news. It'd be interesting to see what comes of the news, because when the news hits, there's more news for days and days thereafter.
Who's the next Pittsburgh Steelers head coach now? It's almost like there isn't an obvious candidate. Obviously, I know that Tomlin came for as defensive coordinator in Tampa. You know, you're just not quite sure where they're going to pick. But I mean, we're now in a situation where 3 of the 4 AFC North teams have head coaching vacancies, and I would argue the one that needed to change the head coach kept their guy. What a crazy division! So, oh Jesus, so crazy. I'm interested to know what Pittsburgh Steelers fans think of this. I mean, we've posted this up. You can comment on it on Spotify as well as to how confident you're feeling. But I don't know. This news feels simultaneously crazy yet expected. In the same way that, look, if that kick was missed last week and the Ravens had lost to the Texans this week, we'd probably do an instant reaction of Harbaugh getting, being out. I feel like this has been in the ether for a while, but at the same time, it just doesn't feel real when it happens.
No, I guess people just looked at it and said, look, yeah, we've been here before. We were here this time last year when they lost the wild card game. And again, it wasn't a very fruitful performance against the Ravens that game. And the manner last night, people would look at it from the outside looking in and go, yet again, they've been dominating the wild card game. Nothing has evolved. Nothing has moved on. People suggested they went all in. I mean, they traded for Metcalf. They brought in Jalen Ramsey, John Smith from the Dolphins. You look at those names on paper, you look what they did to get Aaron Rodgers in, the back and forth all last season, you could argue they did go in. And they did win the division. They haven't won the division. They've been a wildcard team for some years, but people will obviously kind of point to that kick missed at the end that could make, as you said, could have meant it was a very different scenario. And Mike Tomlin could have been gone last week as opposed to this Tuesday evening in January. Um, yeah, all attention will turn now to who's the next coaches. I think it changed the conveyor belt of the coaching predicament that we're dealing with at the moment in terms of where people want to go. It's going to be an interesting few weeks. There's playoff football on, and yet we're talking about off-season content. I love it. I love it because these stars are just fantastic.
This story is crazy. It's funny. I'm 15 minutes away from meeting up with Craig and Ben to record the AV Club, and the conversation was supposed to be Aaron Rodgers, but now this is completely blown up in our face. Thanks, Mike Tomlin, for making sure that you're still the alpha when it comes to the conversation around the Steelers, and it's not Aaron Rodgers. But look, plenty more stuff coming over the Irish NFL show over the course of the week. Like I said, the AV Club available for you on Wednesday morning, and then we're giving our divisional round previews on Thursday night. But that will probably also now include some talk around whatever's happening to Steelers, because like I said, we're recording this just as the news is broken, as the report has come out. Tomlin himself still hasn't spoken, as I'm sure he will. And then as we go on, the melodrama shall continue into further weeks. For now, thank you very much for listening to the Irish NFL show.